earthquakes that we've experienced in Christchurch have led me to read a lot of the international literature around something called recovery. And Mr. Speaker, what the lessons of that reading has taught me is that these lessons are just as relevant to economic recovery post-recession as they are to disaster recovery post the disaster that we've had in Christchurch. Mr. Speaker, you need a plan, you need milestones, and you need key performance indicators. All of the literature says that around recovery, and that's what we should have in New Zealand for economic recovery post-recession. In fact, I would have thought that John Key would want key performance indicators unless they would actually highlight to those who are not mesmerised by the smile that never quite reaches the eyes that there is no plan, and there never has been. Never from day one, since that government was elected to office, has there been a plan for our economic recovery. In fact, I remember a job summit. Does anyone remember the job summit? What came out of the job summit? I remember a cycleway. And what went into the job summit? Yes, a cycleway, a predetermined agenda from the National Party. John Key leading New Zealand to recovery with a cycleway. Mr. Speaker, I'm not getting on that particular bike. Mr. Speaker, the man who has come to politics from the very profession that gave us the global financial crisis thinks that a smile and wave can substitute for a genuine economic recovery plan, and what I say is that it cannot. A genuine economic recovery plan must be sustainable, and it must make us more resilient as an economy and as a country in the long term. Mr. Speaker, this is the man who promised to turbocharge the economy and has yet all he's managed to do is kick the tyres, Mr. Speaker. And now he's kicking the tyres of New Zealand's assets. And you know, when you kick the tyres of something, it's because you're checking to see whether they're something you want to buy. And Mr. Speaker, the tragedy is that he's using the Christchurch earthquakes as now an additional excuse to sell our country's family silver. Mr. Speaker, his friends in the international financial markets are, of course, delighted to see that New Zealand is back in business, but actually they're much more delighted to see that it is now up for sale. Mr. Speaker, National campaigned at the last election saying no to asset sales in its first term, and it would seek the mandate at this election. So that is what this election is all about. I think we should name this election for what it is. It is a referendum on the sale of our assets, nothing more and nothing less. A vote for National is a vote to sell our assets. A vote for Labour is to ensure that they are not sold. Mr. Speaker, we believe on this side of the House that this is a referendum that we will win. And we will win this argument, we will win this referendum, because I haven't met anyone, not one person, who thinks it's sensible to sell an asset for a short-term benefit and ruin the long-term gain that it represents for the economy. Mr. Speaker, this is right across the political spectrum. These are National voters, these are Labour voters. It doesn't matter where they sit on the political spectrum.
Point of order, Kevin Haig.
Mr. Speaker, I really regret interrupting my colleague, but the interjection from Paul Quinn means it's impossible to actually hear what my colleague Leanne Dalziel, who's located a mere 10 metres away from me, is actually saying.
I think it's a fair point of order to ask Paul Quinn to be more reasonable with his interjections. The Honourable Leanne Dalziel.
Mr. Speaker, this is right across the political spectrum. These are National voters, these are Labour voters, except for the extreme right. And of course they are now positioning Don Brash to come back to finish off what he started in 2005 and was unable to do so because of the wisdom of the electorate. And that's why I believe it's a referendum we will win. Mr. Speaker, the tragedy now for Christchurch is that we're going to be blamed for the sale of these assets. We're going to be told that there is no alternative. Mr. Speaker, what has happened in Christchurch has been a disaster of huge proportions, but it does present us with a chance to become a more resilient city. And actually, if we play this right, it could make us more resilient as a country as well. And rather see Christchurch blamed for the reimposition, for the failed economic prescription that we've seen from that party over and over again, and the sale of our country and now potentially our city's assets as well. why can't Christchurch's legacy serve as a symbol of how we can turn disaster into opportunity, sustainably secure our economic recovery as a nation and own our future once more?
Amy Adams.